Okay, The Explorer's Daughter by Carrie Herbert. So the most important thing on this paper is you think about how this will ultimately be compared with another text. So I'll say this with all of the Language Paper 1 pieces. Don't go too deep in there. Already you can see my annotations. That's actually the upper limit of what I would expect. You'll only ever write about this text by itself on question 4. And so don't over-annotate it. Always remember that question 5, you'll be comparing it with another text that will be unseen. And so you've got to stay a little bit loose. So I recommend for all of these texts, you need to know it well. You need to know the key kind of juicy bits where there's lots and lots to talk about. Don't be afraid if there's several lines, maybe even a paragraph where we just say that's a bit narrative, so it's not too juicy, I'm going to move on. You don't want to over-annotate these. Don't make your life harder when it comes to revision. So here we go. You should have read this if you're watching this video. So if you haven't, pause the video now, give it a read, and then we'll go through it. Very importantly for this opening, we begin with tension. And that tension I've got represented in blue highlighting. And then that tension continues all the way through. We pick it up again towards the bottom of this page, and we pick it up again towards quite near the end. The very end is an interesting coda, and I'll get to that towards the end of this video. But the tension builds and builds as we get closer and closer to the narwhal. In terms of narrative structure, sometimes we're at a distance from the narwhal, like at the beginning. We then step away and learn about the history of the Inuit people and the narwhal. We then come back and we're at a middle distance from the narwhal. We then turn the page and we are up close with the hunters to the narwhal, fearing for the safety of the men, and then we pull away again. So we're constantly almost zooming in and zooming out in our narrative structure, and that helps build the tension. So let me pick out some key quotations here. I'm not going to talk through everything here, but you are welcome to pause the video and look up some of my annotations. So we open with a distance and some interesting adverbials of place and time. The narwhal was spotted again, this time very close, within an hour. So all of those adverbials of place, this time very close, and within an hour for adverbial of time, that helps create this sense of tension. You know, you've got to act now. It's very, very close. We've got, further in blue, scrambling back up to the lookout. And then took a sharp intake of breath. These continuous verbs, scrambling back, and then the semantic connotations of rushing and pain, taking a sharp intake of breath. These again help build the sense of tension. And then this nice sort of tactile moments. The hunters were close enough to touch the narwhal with their bare hands. So that's our tension at the start. And then in yellow, I've got that the narwhals are intelligent and ethereal or magical or mythical creatures. So look at this. The narwhal circled, methodically passing each other by. So methodically, the idea that they are calculating in the way they move, that suggests an intelligence. The glittering kingdom, the evening light turning butter gold, glinting off man and whale and catching the soft billows of smoke. That gorgeous, very detailed description of the majestic Arctic landscape. I fell to wondering if the narwhal existed at all or were instead mischievous tricks of the shifting light. That lovely metaphor to describe the narwhal as if they are this magical or mythical, ethereal creature. Moving forward, because again, we don't want to focus too much on these bits. I've skipped over a whole paragraph there because it's just introducing us to the idea of the narwhal and their relationship with the Inuit people. Here is a juicy bit. I've literally written juicy on the left-hand side over here. This bit here would be great if you have a question about the Inuit people and the narwhal, or their relationship with the narwhal. If you have a question on tension, skip this. This doesn't help us with the tension at all. So I've circled all these lovely words. These are all adverbs of degree. So an essential, well, actually, essential contributor, necessary, only source, one reason, valuable, rich meat. Some of them are adjectives, but they function really as adverbs of degree here. adverbs of degree tell us to what extent something has happened. So how much of a contributor is an essential contributor. How important is it? It is necessary. And here's another one I've just spotted as we've been going. The Eskimos have never suffered from scurvy. Again, another adverb of degree there. Or actually frequency there, adverb of frequency. So the point I'm trying to make here is it shows how integrated the narwhal's life is into the Inuit community, how important it is. And it's all those keywords I've circled in green, highlight and emphasize the importance. Remember, all techniques ever do in writing is they emphasize what's being said. This paragraph is saying it's important, the narwhal is important to them, and these techniques are just emphasizing that feeling. So, in orange, we've got this justification through a litany of facts. Litany is a nice word for list. A justification through a litany of facts. Essential. Blubber of the whale is rich in necessary vitamins. Source of vitamin C. Eskimos have never suffered from scurvy. The dark, rich meat is still a valuable part of their diet. And then further down, we've got underlined in orange that they make harpoon tips and handles for hunting implements, protective tupelacs, central beam of their small ancient dwellings. And so if you wanted to unpick this further, you could say, everything from how they live to how they eat to how they hunt to how they hold up their houses, everything in some way uses resources taken from the narwhal, whether that's for sustenance or whether that's just for structure of how they live. So that's a really, really important one. Little grammar nut that I am, I've included this bit here. This correlative or correlative, should have a double R, correlative conjunction. It's almost like a rule of two. Still valuable part of the diet for both man and dogs. It doubles the effect. This isn't just sustenance for the men, it's sustenance for the dogs. I've skipped out the next bit just because we've kind of already said everything there is to say, and I'd just be repeating myself just with new bits of text. There's nothing new there. So let's move down to the bottom. We've now got a really juicy bit about tension. So here we are with the women with binoculars looking out at the men. So we're at like a middle distance looking at the hunting happening. And look at the, I've written past continuous verbs, so that's ing verbs, creating this sense of dynamic tension here. The women clustered on the knoll of the lookout, binoculars pointing in every direction, each woman focusing on her husband or family member, occasionally spinning round at a small gasp or jump as one of the women saw a hunter or a narwhal. So two things to pick up on there. One, the dynamic past continuous verbs, pointing, spinning, and focusing. But also, that's a very long sentence. That is a long, compound, complex sentence, and it builds a sense of tension. For me, it's almost like enjambment in a poem. It builds a pace and a rapidity with which this information is being delivered. It heightens the tension through these long, complex sentences. Each wife knew her husband instinctively and watched their progress intently. Lovely adverbs there. Adverbs of manner to fuel the tension. Instinctively, intently. That very powerful word. Crucial that their husband catch a narwhal. It's part of their staple diet, etc., etc. I've noticed over here, asyndetic listing, all commas, and there's no and. So asyndetic in this long compound complex sentence, listing everything going on here, and asyndetic lists always feel like it's a never-ending list, as if it could go on and on. So we're now reaching the climax of the chase. We break the tension. So why have I written that? Breaks the tension with this yellow section. Just as the tension is mounting for the women, especially watching the men through their binoculars, we suddenly pull away from the chase. So the tension builds and pulls away, builds and pulls away. So the narwhal are intelligent creatures, their senses are keen and they talk to one another underwater, their hearing is particularly developed and they can hear the sound of the paddling kayak at a great distance. So that yellow, again, links us back to the beginning of the text where we're describing the narwhal as very intelligent, almost magical creatures. They communicate, they're methodical. We're back to the hunt, and here we are with with the tension again. So one hunter was almost on top of a pair of narwhal, and they were huge. He gently picked up his harpoon and aimed. In that split second, my heart leapt for both hunter and narwhal. I urged the man on in my head. He was so close and so brave to attempt what he was about to do. He was miles from land in a flimsy kayak and could easily be capsized and drowned. Just pause there for a second. So you'll notice I've done these navy blue circles. And these help to slow down the sense of urgency. So we have a semantic field of urgency, split second, miles from land, foolhardy, only one harpoon. And yet the pace is continuously disrupted. So that you could call this, you could either just say the use of the dashes and the semicolon slow the pace, or you can say there's a disrupted syntax in order to control the pace and the flow. I mean, at sentence level, from he gently picked up his harpoon all the way to capsized and drowned, that's all one sentence again. So again, long, compound, complex sentence to help build the sense of tension. It's just here it's a bit more controlled with all these dashes and semicolons. The end of that paragraph, the hunter had no rifle, only one harpoon with 2 heads and 1 bladder. It was a foolhardy exercise and one that could only inspire respect. And yet, at the same time, my heart also urged the narwhal to dive, to leave, to survive. We have an asyndetic tricolon to create this sense of urgency here. So the asyndetic tricolon, to dive, to leave, to survive. It's also anaphoric because it's 2, 2, 2. So it's anaphoric and asyndetic and a tricolon. And all of those techniques, so what did I just mention? Anaphoric, being asyndetic and being a tricolon, and the semantics of dive, leave, survive, are creating that sense of urgency. It's a very, very rich moment. As you'll notice from all of my teaching and all of my videos, I'm obsessed with these moments where lots of different features overlap, and they have this magnifying effect that really draw out the and communicate the meaning that's at the center of the text there. Notice also the semantics of precarity or fragility. The kayak, flimsy kayak, could easily be capsized and drowned. Those words, flimsy and easily, very nicely communicate how dangerous this situation is. Also, was miles from land. So there's a number of different ways. If you wrote about this semantically, you could join some of these different quotes together. If you wrote about this grammatically, you could also join lots of different quotes together, depending on how it is you want to write about it. But bear in mind, you actually won't be doing this deeper dive into it on a question 4 because you need to keep an eye on the time. You've probably only got about 21 minutes on question 4, so you want to pick the low-hanging fruit, explain yourself really well, use lots of terminology, really get to the heart of what you're saying. Finally, the end. So I would describe this final section as a coda. A coda is a musical term, and it's an additional bit of music almost at the end of a piece, and it reflects on the motif so far. So we reach the end of the tension by the end of line 51, and then the writer steps away entirely from the tension and the pursuit of the narwhal, and instead reflects on the ethics of what we have just read. So I've written here in this bubble, this paragraph functions as a coda reflecting on the hunt. There is an attempt to evaluate the two sides of the argument. And so in purple, we've got the needs of the hunter and their families. They use every part of the animals they kill. Hunting is still an absolute necessity in Thule. So that's the justifying argument. And then you've got the isolation of the Inuit people. They are still there is still only one annual supply ship that makes it through. So still and only are adverbs. They're adverbs of degree. Still and only one annual supply ship that makes it through. The ice to Kanak, and the small twice weekly plane. So again, adverb of frequency, twice weekly, adjective small, carry a certain amount of goods. Again, very qualifying adjective there, certain amount of goods. It's not unlimited. They can't just Amazon Prime everything. They are entirely cut off, and therefore they have to rely on these on hunting the narwhal in order to survive. I've written some notes there at the end. which you can look at if you pause the video. I'm sure if you go back and pause the video enough, you'll be able to read and zoom in on all of these notes. Most of these bubbles are just guiding questions, so you're not missing much with these things here. Okay, that was The Explorer's Daughter by Carrie Herbert for Language Paper 1, Section A. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Thank you and goodbye.